The early days of June 2025 brought a sharp escalation. Ukraine launched a significant drone attack on June 1st. The targets were Russian air bases deep within Russian territory. Ukraine stated these sites housed long-range bombers, some nuclear-capable. The operation, planned for over 18 months, was a bold move by Kiev. Ukrainian officials claimed substantial success, asserting 41 Russian warplanes were destroyed or damaged. Satellite imagery from Planet Labs PBC and Maxar Technologies showed visible damage at several airfields. One key target was the Belaya Air Base in eastern Siberia, part of Russia's strategic nuclear forces. At least 7 bombers, including 3 Tu-95 aircraft and 4 Tu-22M bombers, were shown destroyed at Belaya. Ukraine used smuggled drones for this surprise attack, highlighting new vulnerabilities for Russia. The Russian Defense Ministry acknowledged incidents at airbases but claimed fires were quickly extinguished and other drone attacks repelled. The official Russian account sought to downplay the extent of the damage, yet the Ukrainian claims and supporting imagery suggested a serious breach of Russian air defenses. This event marked a new phase in the conflict's dynamics. The implications were immediately clear, impacting Moscow's military prestige and strategic capabilities. The world registered the audacity of this military action. Retaliation from Moscow was not a matter of if, but when. President Vladimir Putin made his intentions clear in a call with U.S. President Donald Trump on or before June 4, 2025. Putin strongly stated Russia would respond to Ukraine's drone attack. The message was unambiguous. Russia would not let this attack go unanswered. Russian officials were initially guarded about specifics, but indicated military options were on the table. This phrase suggested a range of potential actions, leaving room for speculation and concern among international observers. Putin framed Ukraine's actions in stark terms, accusing Kyiv of attempting to disrupt negotiations and labeling the Ukrainian government as a terrorist organization. This language serves to dehumanize the opponent and justify future harsh measures. The Russian military establishment was undoubtedly assessing its options. The drone attack was a direct challenge, striking at symbols of Russian power and exposing vulnerabilities. Therefore, Putin's vow of retaliation carried considerable weight. The Kremlin needed to reassert its authority and deter future Ukrainian attacks of this scale. The world waited to see how Putin would make good on his promise. The stakes were incredibly high for all involved. This is a common pattern in such conflicts. The phone call between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin was a focal point. It occurred in the immediate aftermath of the drone strike. The conversation on or before June 4, 2025 lasted over an hour. President Trump, in a social media post, conveyed a somber outlook stating the call would not lead to immediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. Trump reportedly informed Putin that the United States was not warned in advance of Ukraine's major drone operation. This detail addressed potential Russian suspicions of U.S. complicity, but also highlighted the complexities of alliances. Ukraine acted independently in this significant military endeavor, carrying its own risks. The conversation also touched upon broader U.S.-Russia relations, with an exchange of views on prospects for restoring cooperation. Such language, amidst acute crisis, can seem contradictory but may reflect a desire to keep channels open. Beyond Ukraine, the two leaders discussed Iran, agreeing that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Putin reportedly suggested he could participate in discussions with Iran, offering to be helpful in reaching a rapid conclusion. This part of the conversation shows how global powers juggle multiple crises. Even as one conflict rages, other geopolitical concerns persist. The discussion on Iran added another layer to the complex Trump-Putin interaction. The reality of current relations remains deeply strained by the war. With Putin's promise of retaliation, speculation mounted regarding Russia's next moves. The Kremlin's statement that military options were on the table was deliberately vague, creating uncertainty and anxiety. Russia possesses a wide array of capabilities, from conventional military strikes to asymmetric warfare. One strong possibility was an intensification of missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian critical infrastructure. Such attacks aim to cripple Ukraine's ability to function and undermine civilian morale. Russia has employed these tactics before, and a significant escalation would inflict further suffering on the Ukrainian population. Another option involved actions along the front lines, with Russia potentially launching new offensive operations. However, Ukrainian defenses have proven resilient, and any new Russian offensive would face stiff resistance. Beyond conventional military actions, other scenarios included cyber attacks against Ukrainian government and financial institutions, and intensified disinformation campaigns. Russia might also seek to apply pressure in other geopolitical arenas to demonstrate severe consequences for the attack on its air bases. The Kremlin would aim to deter Ukraine and its partners. The choice of response would signal Moscow's intentions and shape the future trajectory of the conflict. The world watched anxiously for Russia's chosen path of retribution. The potential for a conflict to spiral out of control increases. The stakes were incredibly high for all involved. Section 5: Trump's Shifting Sands, a History of Pronouncements. President Trump's engagement with President Putin showed his evolving rhetoric. In May 2025, Trump set a 2-week deadline for Putin. He threatened to change the U.S. response if peace efforts stalled. This suggested growing impatience from Washington. Days earlier, Trump criticized Putin after a deadly escalation. His words reflected international outrage. After a call with Putin, Trump's tone was more measured. His Truth Social post omitted the deadline and criticisms. This shift could be due to diplomatic necessity or strategy. Understanding these shifts affects perceptions of U.S. policy. Consistency in messaging is vital during international crises. Trump's unpredictability can be a tactic, but also create confusion. Observers noted the lack of reference to his earlier strong words. It added another layer of complexity to the unfolding situation. Section 6: Ukraine's Stand Diplomacy in the Face of Fire. Ukraine, while executing bold military operations, continued its diplomatic efforts. President Volodymyr Zelensky remained a vocal advocate for his nation. In a post on X, he emphasized that numerous talks with Russia had not yielded reliable peace. He warned that any weak global reaction to Putin's threats would be misinterpreted as readiness to turn a blind eye to aggression. Ukrainian officials actively sought increased international support. Yuri Sak, Ukraine's Minister of Strategic Industries, expressed hope for a robust U.S. response to Russia's incessant missile and drone attacks. Sak specifically called for more sanctions and pressure on Moscow. Ukraine believes that only sustained international pressure can alter Russia's calculations. A high-level Ukrainian delegation was in Washington, D.C. around this time, set to meet U.S. senators on June 4, 2025. The delegation included Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko and Andriy Yermak, head of the presidential office. They planned to discuss defense support, the situation on the battlefield, and sanctions against Russia. The Ukrainian delegation also aimed to discuss a reconstruction investment fund, highlighting Ukraine's focus on long-term recovery. Even amidst intense fighting, planning for the future continues. Ukraine's diplomatic push underscored its multi-pronged strategy, combining military resistance with efforts to galvanize global support. Section 7: The Nuclear Precipice, a Dangerous New Threshold. The Ukrainian drone attack on air bases housing nuclear-capable bombers raised profound concerns. The risk of nuclear escalation, however remote, entered many calculations. Kremlin advisors and some of President Trump's aides shared concerns about a growing risk of nuclear confrontation. This attack touched upon a sensitive nerve, involving assets linked to Russia's strategic deterrent. Kirill Dmitriev, head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, called it an attack on Russian nuclear assets, a framing that could justify an extraordinary response. Keith Kellogg, Trump's envoy for Ukraine and Russia, warned that attacking nuclear assets inherently increases the risk of escalation. The history of nuclear disarmament adds another layer to this crisis. Ukraine famously gave up its nuclear weapons in 1994 in exchange for security assurances from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia. Russia's subsequent aggression has made a mockery of these assurances. The current situation underscores the fragility of nuclear deterrence. When strategic assets are targeted, even with conventional weapons, the danger magnifies. Miscalculation becomes a greater threat, and the potential for a conflict to spiral out of control increases. The world has lived under the shadow of nuclear weapons for decades. The events of June 2025 served as a chilling reminder of the unthinkable becoming thinkable if tensions are not carefully managed. Section 8: Illusory Peace Negotiations Under Duress. Despite the escalating violence, diplomatic efforts for peace continued, albeit with limited success. A second round of direct peace talks recently concluded in Istanbul without a major breakthrough. The primary agreement reached was to swap more prisoners of war. important for humanitarian reasons but far short of a comprehensive peace deal. The core issues dividing Russia and Ukraine remained unresolved, making the path to peace long and arduous. Ukrainian negotiators reported a significant stumbling block. Russia rejected their demand for an unconditional ceasefire. Russia's refusal indicated its unwillingness to halt hostilities without preconditions, suggesting Moscow still believed it could achieve its objectives through military means. The Russian negotiating team claimed to have proposed multi-day ceasefires in certain areas of the front line, but such offers are often viewed with skepticism. Ukraine seeks a comprehensive nationwide ceasefire. The overall status of peace negotiations remained bleak. President Zelensky's assessment was that talks had not brought reliable peace. Ukraine's experience has been one of continued Russian aggression, shaping their approach to negotiations. Trust is a scarce commodity. Without a fundamental shift in Russia's position or a dramatic change in battlefield dynamics, a lasting peace agreement seemed distant. The cycle of violence and tentative talks continued. Section 9. Global Tremors: The Widening Cracks in World Order. Ukraine's drone attack and Putin's vow of revenge send tremors across the globe. These events challenge global security and strain alliances. The post-Cold War order appears increasingly frayed. The conflict in Ukraine is a stress test for international institutions. Actions reverberate beyond Eastern Europe, affecting energy and food security. The risk of wider conflict remains ever present. The Putin-Trump call also touched upon Iran's nuclear program. Major powers juggle multiple crises, cooperating and conflicting simultaneously. Putin also spoke with the Pope about peace in Ukraine. Diverse channels are being explored. The Ukraine drone attack underscores the perilous state of US-Russia relations. Discussions on restoring cooperation are fraught with obstacles. The war in Ukraine has created deep wounds and profound mistrust. The world watches, hoping for de-escalation but bracing for continued uncertainty.